you have to identify which segment you're going to solve problem for and what exact problems you're going to solve, and do a lot of research. And the way of doing research, the best way of doing research would be to go and just sit in the farm and observe and see things. If you want to build a post harvest solution, go and work with the farmer when he harvests his crop, and how he takes to the market and what are the challenges that he faces during that, while selling his crop. If you want to build something which is more into supply chain, or from you sell it into mandi to plate, then you have to be present there and observe and see what are the problems.
Welcome to the Startup Operator podcast. We're recording the first podcast of the year, and my guest today is Anand Verma, who is the founder of Fasal. Fasal is an exciting agri-tech startup that provides farm-specific microclimatic forecasts. We're going to understand more about that and also the broader innovation happening in agri-tech. So, welcome to the podcast, Anand. I wish you a very happy new year.
Wish you the same, Roshan, and thank you for having me here. Really excited to talk about or begin the new year with discussing about agri-tech and the new changes that we are aimed to bring in this country. So really excited about it.
Awesome. Yeah. So Anand, let's get right down to it. Describe what Fasal does, and if you could also talk about your journey leading to founding Fasal.
Definitely, Roshan. So I'll just give you a brief about Fasal. I think you might have heard of Fasal being a precision agriculture pioneer in India. And now what we really do is we try to help farmers make data-driven, informed decision by various means that we will talk probably later in the discussion. Now the whole journey really started with our own desire to do farming, and then realizing there are so many challenges in even growing a single crop. And so yeah, it is backdated to around 3 years back, when I and my co-founder Shailendra, both of us were working in our uh, uh, jobs, and we were very happy. We were working on very exciting technologies to build products from scratch. And while doing so, we also come from farming background. So if you look at my background, my father is a seed producer. I come from a generation. My family is into farming for multiple generations, and I have seen all their struggles. And I was the first in my family who decided not to pursue farming as a career, but go and become engineer, and that's a desire everywhere. So if you look at even if you talk to people today, especially the farmers, especially in the eastern and northern part of India, you'll find that most of the people don't look at farming as a profession. If you're not able to do anything, then they'll say, yeah, the last option is farming.
Keti.
We really want to change that perspective altogether. And that was a bitter piece when I look at my past, that this is exactly the same way I was thinking, my family was thinking, my parents were thinking. So when we became engineers, and when I was pretty much doing a lot of the stuff in technology, and so realized that there are certain problems that we could actually solve. And the whole journey started with our own passion of doing farming. So Shailendra also comes from a similar background. His father is marketing head for North India for Escort Tractors, the tractor company. So he has been to farm, have seen problems, have seen farmers have. So he has been to multiple places, across center India and middle of the India, in MP, Chhattisgarh, and various parts in North India, and have seen problems. So both of us, when we were in our last job in 2017, I think somewhere in the mid, we wanted to buy a farmland in Mysore and wanted to grow colored capsicum. So that was the real thing that we really wanted to do as a side project. It was more of an hobby, because of our own passion and desire to build farming as a side sort of project for us. And while doing so, when we started talking to people, every time we spoke to anyone, in terms of taking guidance, we only heard problems. And everybody sort of said that you should not get into this. You have a fantastic job, a good career. Why you want to go back and do farming? And this is not something people are actually looking forward to do. And once you already have your career set. I think those were certain realization that helped us found out the very core problems into agriculture. And the more we spoke, the more we traveled, the more we looked at this entire sector, the only thing that we saw was huge problems. And all the problems were primarily because there were no technological interventions or any innovation that has really happened in this sector. If you look at agriculture as a whole, what has happened in last few decades, you will see that there have been improvement in terms of, good fertilizer, good seed, genetically modified seed. You'll see some improvements or some innovation that has happened on the machinery side. But what about information technology? What about AI? What about IoT? Did anybody looked at these as a viable technology to reshape the entire agriculture industry? Whether it is pre-harvest, post-harvest, whatsoever. So I think those were the things that we realized, that the entire agriculture sector, there has been a lot of information asymmetry that exists, and there are a lot of opportunities that can be leveraged or that can be utilized in terms of in a way that we could build technologies that could solve ground problems for farmers. I think that was the moment when we realized that, okay, let's not do farming, let's rather use our skill set and technology and whatever we have learned and built, and try to innovate something that could help farmers in a broader way. And that realization turned into really what we have today as Fasal. So that's a sweet short story that we have.
Yeah, fantastic. So, I have the similar experience as yours. I mean, I come from a farming family as well. So we grow coffee in Coorg. And
Wow, wonderful.
typically, if you talk to anyone, they will give you like a whole laundry list of problems that are associated with it, right?
Correct.
Ranging from monsoon not being predictable, or not available, no availability of labor, etc., etc., right? So you mentioned a few of these problems with farming and agriculture, right? Like information asymmetry and so on. So can you talk about those in a little more detail? I mean, what do you think is required to make farming and agriculture viable in India?
Absolutely, Roshan. I think when we looked at the plethora of problems that existed in agriculture, we tried to understand more in terms of, so agriculture, if you look at it, is a very broader domain. It's a huge sector which can be divided into niche segments. And the way I classify it so simple way to classify it as pre-harvest and post-harvest. Now, your pre-harvest is really the longest cycle wherein you prepare your land and then you grow your crop. And after that, you have a shorter cycle of post-harvest where you have to move your produce from your farm to market or to the consumer's plate. The problem in agriculture existed everywhere. So probably we'll discuss more about what are the challenges that exist in this entire segment. But and then when we started, we also saw that so problems that existed in post harvest were largely being captured and being taken up as a challenge and being solved also to some extent. So there are a lot of companies who are trying to solve supply chain problem post harvest, trying to help reduce post harvest losses, even trying to help farmers take their produce to consumer plate directly, sort of removing a lot of middleman in the picture, and making sure that farmer realizes higher gain than usual. Apart from that, where we found that there is still a lot of scope and a lot of gap where not much has been done is the pre-harvest. And again, in pre-harvest, if you ask me to further classify it, I'll say pre-seeding stage and crop growth stage. So pre-seeding or pre-sowing stage is the stage when you are just preparing your field and getting your field ready for growing a crop, which requires your labor, which requires various activities, which requires machineries, procurement, and a lot of other things that you do on the field. That problem has also been not solved, I would say completely, but solved to some extent by various players and new age agritech industries in India and other parts of the world as well. But where it becomes very difficult to even identify problem and solving is a big challenge is the crop growth stage. Now, crop growth stage is a stage when your crop starts growing until you finally harvest it. It can be as long as a year. It can be as short as let's say 2 to 3 months, depending upon what crop you're growing. And that is the time where farmer puts a lot of his time, blood, sweat, money, and everything, taking care of the crop and growing the crop. And that's where you might have also observed a farmer talks about a lot of problem, weather
Yeah.
uncertainty. How do they spray for disease and pest? If they spray more, then it becomes a problem of residue in the crop, and eventually their quality decreases and they're not able to export it to, or not able to even sell it at a higher price, because because again the quality factor is decreased of because of heavy use of spray. Water utilization, though water is available as a commodity, but overutilization of water not just takes that commodity, overutilizes that commodity, but also it affects the crop growth. It affects the final yield. And apart from that, the day-to-day activities that they have to plan with respect to, when they need more laborers on their field, when they need to do certain activities on the field, and everything depends upon various decisions or various things that is happening with the crop. So it's again like us. So the way we feel season and adapt and change ourselves to make sure that we don't get disease, or we don't get we don't get sick, or we don't or we sort of remain healthy and well, is the same that goes for crop. But we have a lot of measures for it. Farmers don't have. The way it has been done so far is various traditional practices being followed, calendar days being followed, and those calendar day schedules, or crop calendar we call it, were defined, let's say, decades ago. So if you go and search for how to grow colored capsicum, let's say, or how to grow chili, you will find a calendar day schedule which says that from first day till the last day of harvest, these are the certain activities that you have to do on week to week basis, or day to day basis, or month on month basis. But those practices are being challenged because we all know climate change. We all talk about it. Climate is not same as it was 10 years ago, or it is not same as even if it was 5 years ago. There is a erratic change in the climate itself. Soil degradation is a very, very serious problem, and because the soil is not same, and soil degradation has happened because of overutilization of resources, overutilization of fertilizers, overutilization of spray and pest. So when these things are not same, how can you rely on the same traditional practices or crop calendar that has been created ages ago? And that's where the real problem happens, that most of the farmers were facing difficulties in adopting to the new climate, to not being able to sustain with the various degradation in soil, and various new practices and new diseases and new pests that is coming into picture now. And that's where Fasal comes in. So what Fasal really does is, and believe me, this is the most difficult thing to build, because you have to be with the farmer from the first day of the crop till the last day of the crop. And you cannot go wrong, because it's sort of a mission critical system. If one of the decision goes wrong, then the crop might suffer, and then farmer eventually might suffer. So what Fasal does is, Fasal has built a mechanism by which Fasal collects data from the farm. And the data is all about the climatic data, the microclimatic data, really. So we basically capture farm level data, and we know what crop farmer is growing, what is the stage of the crop. And based upon that, Fasal provides advisories, or you can say actionable intelligence to farmers, which is very much farm specific, crop specific, and crop stage specific, and tells farmers that what they need to do on their farm on a day-to-day basis, in terms of when they need to irrigate, how much they need to irrigate, when they need to fertigate, what could be the right mixture of component that they have to mix in their fertigation, when there is a disease pressure high, when they need to spray, when they when they need to make their crop sort of cover their crop with or take necessary precaution in terms of making sure that there is no sort of disease and pest spread that is happening. So all these all these intelligence is being provided to farmers by Fasal, and that happens really by the mean of the technology that we have built. It's basically an IoT device that has a lot of sensors that measures all these climatic parameters, the below the soil parameters, and canopy level parameters, crop parameters, and this monitoring is real time. It's 24/7. So every 5 minutes or 15 minutes or half an hour or 1 hour interval, we monitor these parameters, and then based upon the data that comes, we have an agri research team that an AI team that basically understands this data, understand how this data is applicable for a certain crop, and what are the disease, pest, irrigation, fertigation, other requirements are for that crop in that stage. And based upon that, it basically sort of, there's an algorithm which runs and generates insight or generates recommendations or list of actions that get sent to farmer, saying if you follow these 5 activities today, we will guarantee that your crop is growing well and growing fine and growing healthy. So this is exactly what we do.
Very interesting. So do you have a specific crop focus as such, Anand, at this point of time?
Yes, Roshan. So Fasal is very, very crop focused. For us, the real customers are the crops. So the crops that we're currently working on are primarily into horticulture segment. Again, when we talk about the entire agriculture, it's it basically includes everything. But we are right now focused only on horticulture, which is fruits and vegetables. And in horticulture, again, on very certain set of crops like grape, pomegranate, chili, capsicum, tomato, and few other crops that we currently have built the solution for. And there are 8 more crops that are in pipeline. We are also working with coffee, by the way, in Chikmagalur and Coorg. We are running a big scale pilot and research program. We are also running a research and pilot program in Himachal for apple. Apart from that, we have mango, banana, and a couple of more crops that we have in target. And again, this is how we think of scaling our operations and our business, because if we build solution for one crop, which takes, as you understand, which takes a lot of time and research to really, come up with the right algorithms for the right predictions. But once we build the solution for one crop, then it becomes, so wherever in the world that crop is grown becomes a target market for us. So that's really the approach that we have taken. We go crop by crop, very crop focused, and we take some time to do the research and develop the solution for a particular crop.
Right. So how do you prove the ROI case to spend on Fasal for farmers? Because if you look at it, I think the number one thing they spend on right now at this point of time is fertilizers, right? Because they understand, it's a very simple logic that if I, use fertilizers, I'll get a better yield and so on. All of what you're describing seems very sophisticated, seems, a lot of investment in technology and so on and so forth that may not show immediate results, as such, right? So how do you prove this ROI case to farmers? And considering also that I think, majority of India is small holdings, right? These are people with less than, I think, 5 acres of land.
All right, Roshan, I think that's a very, very good question. And, so the way, we do it, or the way we sort of prove ROI, it's really, so I want to put it in a different way. So for example, if you look at, as you mentioned that India is consists of a lot of smallholder farmers where the land is less than 5 acres. That's absolutely true. But if you look at a farmer who is growing, let's say, a horticulture crop, a fruit and vegetable crop, consider chili on a 5-acre land, versus a farmer who is growing, let's say, rice or any grain or millet on a 5-acre land, there's a huge difference between these two farmers. And the difference is the entire crop economics itself.
Cash
if you're
crop,
growing
right?
chili, exactly. So all these vegetables and fruit crops are cash crops. Now, the reason they are cash crops because they require high input, they require high maintenance, they require day-to-day care, and they give you good profit. They give you good returns. Versus if you look at the other side of the world, where if you're growing chili in rice in a 5-acre land, you hardly require 40,000-50,000 rupees as an input, and then at the end you hardly get, let's say, 1 lakh 50,000 rupees an output. The whole economics itself is not sustainable enough for you to sort of make a very high value proposition in these cases. And also, so this is one perspective. The second perspective is whether your land is small or big. If you are looking at your land from a point of view of progress and prosperity, then you know what you need to do. You will not be stopped by not investing in it, whether it is a mean of fertilizer or any other technology. But if you're just looking your land as a survival, as just for survival, then of course, I don't think anything in the world could change that. So it's really the mindset of the customer, the farmers, that matters here. If you have 5-acre land, if you're growing a vegetable crop, we can prove ROI to you, and I'll come to how we justify that ROI and prove that ROI to the farmer. But the persona of the farmer, or the perspective that we want farmers to look at it, is not how much land they own, but what are the practices they follow, what are the crops they are growing, and how they are growing that. What is their thinking? If again it is just about survival, then no technology or even God cannot do anything. If you're really looking as your 1 acre of land also as a mean of progress and prosperity, then of course anything, you will try to do anything to maximize the output from that. And that's exactly what we also try to tell farmer, and it becomes very easy to even prove ROI and justify the solution to a farmer who looks at their farm from these points. So for example, let's say if you talk about a farmer who is owning 5-acre land and he tries to grow chili, he might have drip irrigation system because he understands the value of it. He understands that by using drip irrigation, he is not flooding his land, he's not wasting water, he's not overutilizing water, and he is just giving water that is needed to the plant. And it becomes very easy for us to pitch to that kind of farmer that if you use Fasal is just going to do 10x of what you are achieving with drip irrigation, because drip irrigation helps you precisely irrigate your crop. Fasal will tell you when to irrigate your crop and how much exactly you need to put in terms of liter per plant. That's the kind of precision that we do. And when we go to a farmer and tell about the ROI or value proposition, it's really simple. So if a farmer is growing, let's say chili in 1 acre, how much you are spending per month in terms of your disease pest management, irrigation, fertigation, and other activities. Let's say just talk about disease. If you are spending 2,000 to 3,000 rupees per month on a disease per acre, if you're spending around 1,000-1,500 rupees on irrigation per acre per month on your farm, then if you use Fasal, if you are able to save your disease spray, because what you're doing is you're just following calendar day and spraying every second, third day, that is written in the calendar schedule. But that might not be the right time for a spray. That might not be. So how does it really happens? Disease and pests are nothing but function of weather conditions. Certain climatic condition or weather parameters, sort of triggers their germination and triggers their propagation. We try to capture that well in advance and try to tell farmers that, okay, this is the time you should take a preventive spray. And if you take a preventive, then don't worry about disease. It will not happen, and you don't have to take curative. And the difference is, if you take a curative, it will cost you 5,000 rupees. But if you take for certain disease, if you take a preventive, it might cost you just 500 rupees. So that's the difference. So if we are able to save one spray in 1 month for a farmer, he's not just so he's not just recovering the entire money that he has given to Fasal, but he's also making more money. So his input cost is decreasing, and this is how it has been proved. So once farmer deploys Fasal, he uses it for 1 month, and then he calculates how much he has saved. So the initial few months goes into analyzing the savings that he is doing on the field, and then he understands, oh my God, I'm saving 50% on water, I'm saving at least 40 to 50% on disease and pest sprays. And this goes for few months, and then when the crop starts giving fruit or giving produce, then you'll realize there is a quality difference. Because you have done really well in terms of irrigation and disease and pest management, your quality is improved. And at the end, when you start harvesting, you will realize that, oh, you are making higher yield, you are making better yield. So the better, so better yield and higher yield is where the last realization that farmer receives when he has used Fasal for a season, and that's when he calculates the entire ROI, and then he finds out that he has not just recovered the entire cost of Fasal, but he has made at least 2 to 3x more money, or it would have saved 2 to 3x more in terms of growing his crop for this season when he has used Fasal versus when he has not used Fasal. So that's how we try to put the value proposition and ROI in front of farmers, and they accept it, and they realize it.
Very interesting. So in the initial stages, it's about reducing their input costs, and then probably it takes 4 to 6 months, or considering that there is no crop rotation as such, majority of the places, it might take even like 10 months or 11 months for the person to actually see the yield and see the difference in the yield, right? So how do you structure the economics of fasal? I mean, how do you I was curious from from a business perspective also, and from a farmer's perspective, right? I'm sure that you'll not be able to front load a lot of these costs, but at the same time, I mean, you'll have to make that kind of investments either in sensors or whatever, right? So how do you structure the economics?
Uh, Definitely, Roshan. So I think that's also a very interesting question. So, when we built Fasal, and even usually precision agriculture technology was thought of a very costly and high cost technology to put it in your field. But believe me, it's not. So when we also started, it was costing beyond imagination of a farmer. But right now, the technology cost is 1/4 of drip irrigation for 1 acre.
Mm.
So, and the way Fasal business model works is we give the device to the farmer. So he purchases the device upfront, and then he uses, or we have something called a subscription model that he pays per month, depending upon how much, so for how long he has the crop season, or for when he wants to start, when he wants to stop. So it's pay as you go model. Now, if you talk about the upfront cost, of course, upfront cost is always something that you have to put it upfront, and you have to also justify it, and that always becomes a challenge for any company, as a from a business point of view. Now, as I said, if a farmer is growing these crops that I have mentioned, or if he's a horticulture farmer, he's growing fruits and vegetables, then he's anyways putting money in buying seed, procuring seed. He's putting money in farm equipments. He's putting money in labor. He is putting money in uh, in certain other things which helps him to prepare his field. Now, and even drip irrigation. So, of course, if you're growing crop, prepare your field, you put drip irrigation. Drip irrigation usually costs you around 60,000 to 70,000 rupees an acre. One-time investment, but every time you need to change the pipes, you need to do certain more maintenance work there. If you compare the cost of Fasal, it's one third, 1/4 of drip irrigation per acre, and that becomes very easy sort of thing for a farmer to install Fasal or to deploy Fasal at his field, because it's just a fraction of cost is drip irrigation, where he's just going to increase the drip irrigation value itself by 10x. So if a farmer is already taking drip irrigation as a product, he can he is very much interested to invest a fraction of cost into Fasal, because he's going to see a 10x value at the end. So that's really how we provide the solution. The farmer takes deploys the device, purchases this device upfront, which is again not at all very costly when you talk about horticulture farmer. It's very much affordable, and being an Indian company, that's the leverage that we have. There is nobody in the world who provides precision agriculture solution at a cost point that we provide, and we are very, very, very proud of that. And this cost is just going to decrease. We want even non-horticulture farmers to also afford Fasal, and that will happen very soon. But yeah, in terms of affordability, it's a very affordable system. The way we have even priced our subscription is also in a very intuitive way, that if we are able to save your one spray in 1 month, just one spray, or maybe if you reduce your irrigation by 50%, then you are able to recover your subscription cost. But if you're, if you're able to save 2 sprays, 3 sprays, and you're able to save more water, then you're not just recovering the subscription cost, but you are making more money, and that's exactly how the value has been positioned, or the price has been created.
Right. So all of these insights that you gather from the sensors and whatever, you deliver these insights via an app, or is it something like, like via WhatsApp or something of that sort? And actually, the second part of my question is there a means for you at this point of time to connect that insight into actually making it actionable? So is there a way for you to connect these insights? Into let's say, I mean, connected to crop irrigation, so automatically the water that has to be fed into the crops are like regulated and so on. So is there a are you thinking about that in the sense of connecting the whole ecosystem?
I'm very happy, Roshan, that you brought that question. That's another very, very interesting question. So to answer the first question, how we deliver information, for us to deliver, any insights or any information to back to farmer is really, in his own consumable form, in his language, in his wordings that he understands. So it gets delivered to him in that way. Now, whether it is mobile app, whether it is SMS, whether it is WhatsApp, it's just a mechanism, and we have enabled all. So Fasal is available in form of an app. The notification can get delivered to you, or the insights can get delivered to you on the app, on WhatsApp, on SMS, on email, whatever channel you prefer. So technology is really an enabler here, not a barrier. So we have made sure that whatever minimum technology that a farmer can basically, or he or she has, the message gets delivered to him or her in that channel, and in the way that he understands or she understands. So let's say if you talk about irrigation, so let's say if he's a farmer in Madhya Pradesh or Chhattisgarh, he gets a message like, आपको शाम को 5 बजे 5 लीटर per plant पानी डालना है, in a very simple way, and anybody can understand it. But if you're a corporate, or if you're a very advanced farmer who also wants to do research, then you can just open the Fasal app, and there are a lot of insights available to you that you can trace back. If Fasal has delivered me this message that I have to irrigate 5 liters water at 5 o'clock in the evening, then what is the reason behind it? What is the science behind it? And he can backtrack that to Fasal app, where we show him, this is the evapotranspiration rate. Evapotranspiration as in how much water has been lost from your crop as well as your soil. This is the forecast that is available. This is your crop at this stage. This is the water requirement that your crop needs in this stage. This is the current water available based upon the soil moisture readings that we get from the sensors. So all these things combined is available in the app in a very easy to read form, and then this data has been then transformed into intelligence, which is like put 5 liter water per plant at 5 o'clock in the evening. That's exactly what we do.
Okay.
And so that's how we deliver the information. And in terms of I think this is a very, very important question, that delivering information versus what action has been taken on the farm. So currently Fasal delivers information because that's where we see value, because again, when it comes to farmers, they have various mechanisms by which they take action. Some of them have motors, some of them have drip irrigation. Drip irrigation also is being provided by a lot of companies. So what Fasal is really trying to do is, Fasal has put his innovation in terms of providing in intelligence and advisories and insights. And then we have opened up our channels for any farm mechanization or automation company in the world that can go and integrate with Fasal. So Fasal has open APIs wherein we can integrate Fasal with any available system that automates irrigation, fertigation, spraying, or anything. So they can take data from Fasal APIs and then automate their system. So all these things are readily available, and there are actually few farmers and even enterprise customers who are using this technique. So they have a irrigation company from which they have put irrigation system, and then that irrigation system is utilizing Fasal APIs to basically automate this whole process. So farmer comes to Fasal app and sets that if soil moisture goes below 20 centibar, if soil moisture go beyond 20 centibar, then just go and turn on the pump for 1 hour, because in 1 hour this much liter of water will go into plant and the soil moisture readings will decrease. Or if it decreases, let's say below 20, then just go and turn off. So these kind of systems are already built inside Fasal. It's just that we don't go and reinnovate or reinvent the entire automation system. We are rather an enabler to integrate with them and help them even to automate their solution.
Amazing. So if someone is looking to build a solution for farmers, right, what are the 2 or 3 things that they should keep in mind, basically?
All right. So again, if somebody is, so the first thing for them again would be to really identify the problem and the segments, segment in which they're trying to solve it. Because sorry, as I mentioned, agriculture is a very broad domain, and you have to identify where exactly you're trying to solve problem, because you cannot be from input side to finally on the output side or post harvest. You can be, but not to begin with. As you grow, probably you can be there, but to begin with, you have to identify which segment you are going to solve problem for and what exact problems you are going to solve, and do a lot of research. And the way of doing research, the best way of doing research would be to go and just sit in the farm and observe and see things. If you want to build a post-harvest solution, go and work with the farmer when he harvests his crop, and how he takes to the market, and what are the challenges that he faces during that while selling his crop. If you want to build something which is more into supply chain or more into from you sell it into mandi to plate, then you have to be present there and observe and see what are the problems. If you want to build into pre-harvest, you have to really understand the core problems and identify. And again, you have to identify what exactly you're going to solve, whether you're going to solve as we are solving, whether you're going to reduce their cost of cultivation, increase their yield, their profitability, or you want to become enabler for providing them finances or credits. So again, providing finance and credit is also it also comes into your pre-harvest. So you also have to identify all these things, what exactly you're going to solve, and that could be the right approach. Now, so just like us, we identified that these are the right customers. So identifying customer and persona of a customer would be probably a later stage. The first thing would be to identify the problem and what you're really going to solve, and what technology or solution that you think can be a viable solution for solving that. We could identify a problem and build a solution that is really not economical or not feasible at all. So, or maybe that is not feasible in this market. So all these things, there's no right answer for this. Yeah. There's no right suggestion also for this. It's just that it really depends upon you, your maturity and your understanding about the market, and then thinking about what is the right way to build a solution and take it forward. Take it forward with your customers.
Yeah, there's a plethora of problems, right? We discussed half a dozen or more than that, more than those number of problems itself. There's a temptation to, want to solve everything, right? But what you're saying is, zero in on exactly what is it that you want to focus on, and pick your persona as well based on that, right? So,
correct.
Okay, really sorry for the interruption. I'm just going to take a minute to talk about something amazing. Clervo helps your remote teams be more productive by helping them close decisions more faster. I've worked remotely for the last 4 months, and it's just a lot of going back and forth on Slack, on email, on Zoom, etc., but never really getting to a point of execution, right? Clervo makes things a lot more simpler. You can have communication contextually around decisions that you want to make. All you have to do is open a thread on Slack like this, and continue to talk about what you want to do with a set agenda. It could be your product roadmap, it could be a marketing campaign, it could be a support ticket, etc. And once you're done, it all syncs with your Slack, and you have all of these decisions accessible when you need it, where you need it, right? Guys, I've tried this out and it makes you super productive. If you're even remotely interested, I suggest you go to clergo.com, that's CLERGO.com, and check it out for yourself. Cheers.
So, see, we've spoken a great deal about the productivity and the harvest and all of that, right? The growing side of things. There is also the economics of it, right? Which is again, I mean, it's pretty crazy because as one of the people that I spoke to earlier on the podcast said, farmer is perhaps the only person who buys retail and sells wholesale, right? And what is the innovation that's happening on the market side of things to make it more viable for the farmer?
Sure, Roshan. I think I think that person said it rightly. Farmer buys everything in retail and sells in wholesale, and the reason for that is the system that we have. The inherent design of the system was like that. And I think you also have that topic in your further discussion where we'll probably come and talk about that reform that is taking place. But again, for a farmer, so if you look at the entire post-harvest space in India, especially in India, it is very fragmented. There's really no well-defined structure to it, and because of that, when there was a COVID and lockdown, we faced so many problems that farmers were not able to even put their produce in the market, and the whole supply chain was broken because it was traditional, it was fragmented, and there was no mechanism to even track and figure it out where the problems is and try to move things accordingly. I feel the problem that really exists in the post-harvest cycle is, so there are a couple of things. So for example, we have to build a good infrastructure for post-harvest storage to reduce post-harvest losses. We have to build a good infrastructure for even some of the produce goes for post-processing. We don't just consume, we consume everything, of course, but not just consume everything, but there are certain things which goes for, let's say, various food processing pipeline, drying dried products, dried fruits. We still don't have a very very good infrastructure to basically to take that forward. Whenever there is a produce that has been harvested on the farm, it becomes a matter of few days in which farmer or whosoever is involved in that process to move things from here to there so that it doesn't get destroyed. I mean,
there's something like I think 40% or 50%, some staggering number of percentage of food gets wasted, right?
Exactly. And I think so again, as I told you, when we harvest, our entire focus goes into how fast we can move it, to get it consumed or get it processed.
Farm to plate.
But and our thinking, our thinking is like that because we don't really have an infrastructure where we can put it in a staging mode for some time and then see how the market is moving, where the demand exists. There's no balance really. If you really build a good infrastructure in terms of cold storage or other mechanism by which you can warehouses or various mechanism by which you can actually provide a decent staging time for your produce, wherein it has not been affected by market volatility, you will have a lot of opportunity later on. Because if you can, for example, in most of the season, let's say if there's a grape harvest, then you will see the price initially going high and then goes down and then later on again goes high. How do you basically balance this how you can have fluctuations are fine, of course market works like that, but you can, to certain extent, you can actually avoid that fluctuation from not jumping up and down, but to remain constant. And there is slight fluctuation based upon demand supply that exists. But if you build that infrastructure in place where you can put your product for staging for some time, and you have all the mechanism to track its growth, its quality, and everything, then I think this problem can be solved to a larger extent. And of course, other things which is related to supply chain and moving produce, it's pretty much been already taken care. Not everything, but to some extent it has been taken care. I think the startups that is coming, and there are a lot of the startups that is really doing that is doing really well in this space where they are trying to not just give a higher value realization to farmer, but also bridging the gap between farmer and consumer, so that farmer gets high value and these guys gets better crop, better produce, quality produce. So definitely there's a lot of work going on in this space.
Right. So, without getting into the politics of it, what do you think the recent agriculture reforms achieve to that end?
Thank you, Roshan, for saying that. Should not go into politics, of course. So the way, Roshan, I also look at all these reforms that is being made. I feel that these are very visionary, reforms that has been produced. If again, it really depends upon how it gets implemented. What is the transparency of its implementation? Whether we are aware, we know, we are able to measure its impact. Until unless we are able to, until unless these reforms are or its implementation is transparent, and then there is set measured outcomes and goals that has been put up. Any whatever reform you put as a bill does not really work. On the ground it should work, and we should know it. But when it comes to individual reforms that we talk about, I feel these are really, really very visionary, because the way agriculture has been seen and have worked for ages now, we have seen the capability that it has. But on the other side, we have seen how it has always been clogged. I mean, whenever we talk about, if you go and just Google an American farmer and you Google an Indian farmer, sometimes I feel sad to say this, but if you Google an American farmer, you'll get a different picture. If you Google an Indian farmer, you'll get a different picture. Now, the picture that you can just go and do right away, the picture that you get while you Google Indian farmer is a farmer laying in a dried field, like probably praying to God that what has happened. I mean, he is just helpless. That's not the real picture. This picture has been portrayed by whatever is happening in the country that you see. We, as an individual, as in proud Indians, and as proud country that relies on agriculture, has to change this. The picture is not exactly this. Of course, there is a larger segment of farmers who suffers, who have not been able to do much. But then there is a very large segment of the farmer who are really doing good and who are trying to change things. But the change does not come by providing, by just providing you, loan waivers or subsidies. The change comes by enabling you, by empowering you. What I feel the bill does, and we can talk about individual points on the bill if you want, but what I feel is whatever the bill says or whatever the reforms says, it is more towards empowering farmer rather than giving them another form of subsidy. And I feel that subsidy, giving free water, waiving of loan, helps farmer to helps them to survive, but not to progress.
Right.
If they have to progress, they have to move to better life, get a better prospect. All these changes are needed. And if you want, we can talk about individual reforms and
right.
probably discuss that as well. But overall, this is my feeling, and this is my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Of course, should not be taken as a very generalized in a generalized view, but a personal opinion.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, so you won't go into the depth of what the reforms are and laws are. I mean, I'm sure that these have been covered in other podcasts, including a couple that I have done as well. So this has been a fascinating chat, Anand. I've understood various facets of agriculture and what is the technology innovation that's happening. As we enter this new decade, 2020s, right? What are you most optimistic about for Indian agriculture?
Sure, Roshan. So I think I'm in general very optimistic about Indian agriculture because it is at the cusp of disruption, and we have already started seeing it. So if you see the last 3-4 years, you yourself might have realized how agri-tech startups are coming in. There is a buzzword right now, and I am also calling it a buzzword, because if you go and probably dissect it, you'll find that of course there's a lot of things happening in agri-tech, but again, in agri-tech, a lot of things is being clubbed as agri-tech, wherein these individual or niche segments play a very important role. But I see not just me, but I think the overall industry is pretty much very excited about how agri-tech or farming or agriculture is changing. There are a couple of things that I want to highlight here, and I think these has been also shared in recent conversation on some news channels as well. There is a lot of push is being made towards farmer to grow more horticulture crops. There has been few recent announcements where there's a push, and we also as coming from farming background, I also see that growing horticulture crop is really a way in which you can you can have good success rate, you can make progress, you can achieve more when it comes to agriculture. Use of technology, definitely. I think drip irrigation has been one successful technology that has been scaled in India like anything. The penetration of drip irrigation is really very high, and and it is probably increasing every year on year. I think there should be more effort in terms of availability and scalability of drip irrigation. And apart from that, so horticulture, moving towards horticulture, adopting new technologies like drip irrigation, like precision agriculture farming, that Fasal also provides. And so these are the two things that I see we should definitely do. But this creates the backbone. Apart from that, I think the new innovation that is happening in the area when it comes to agriculture credit or agri credits, there are a lot of companies who are now providing financial credits and insurance to farmers. That is not just on the paper or for media. That is really on the ground. That farmer should leverage. And a couple of other reforms that is happening in terms of FPO and contract farming. I think FPO is really a good initiative, because as an individual, maybe you're not able to get all the advantage of technology and good practices. But if you become, or if you join an FPO, or if some of the farmers together try to leverage technology which is individually inaccessible, that could be a good mean of progress. That is one thing that I see has a lot of potential. That group of farmers join an FPO or create an FPO and try to basically leverage technology that they are not able to do, that they are not able to leverage individually. Apart from that, in terms of technology and innovation that is affecting, I believe farm mechanization is one area where I see new startups will be coming in 2021 and probably later. And when I say farm mechanization, it's because so abhi, if you look at there's always a short of labor everywhere. More farm automation or farm robots kind of thing who can go and probably do the mundane work that you do on a day-to-day basis of cleaning weed. So these kind of farm robotic or farm automation companies or startups that are coming have a good insight going forward. Apart from that, as we discussed earlier also, all those startups who are working on post-harvest, reducing post-harvest losses, are the one who are really going to balance out the entire supply chain going forward, and that's where the real value is. When it really comes to making revenue for farmer. So a lot of effort that is needed there. So again, to summarize it, I feel when it comes to pre-harvest, moving to horticulture, utilizing drip irrigation and other micro irrigation technologies, and moving towards precision agriculture would give you enough chance to reduce your cost of cultivation, grow more and grow better crop, And when it comes to post-harvest, all these companies who can provide support for to reduce the post-harvest losses are the one who are really going to shine in next few years.
Fantastic. So, we started this podcast with a whole bunch of problems and we're ending with a whole bunch of solutions, right? And I guess, that's what is really heartening for me as well when I see people like you innovating on these hard problems and really causing impact, right? So, Anand, this has been a fantastic chat.
Same here, Roshan. Thank you again for having me here. Really enjoyed the talk.
Fantastic. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, then don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite platform and share this episode with all of your fellow startup operators. Also, follow the Startup Operator on LinkedIn and Twitter for more updates. Stay safe, take care, and see you soon on a brand new episode of the Startup Operator.